In a supply closet on the third floor of Blackwood Industries, a CEO made a discovery that would change two lives forever. What he found wasn't theft or sabotage. It was something far more heartbreaking and far more inspiring. If stories about courage in the face of impossible odds speak to you, consider subscribing. These are the stories that remind us what truly matters. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Daniel Blackwood had built an empire, but somewhere along the way, he'd lost touch with the people who kept it running. That's why he found himself walking the third-floor hallway of his own factory at 2 a.m, dressed in a maintenance worker's uniform with Dan stitched across the pocket. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the industrial gray walls. His expensive leather shoes had been replaced with scuffed work boots, his tailored suits traded for canvas pants, and a company jacket that smelled faintly of machine oil. He'd been doing this for 3 weeks now, moving through his company like a ghost, watching, listening, learning things that never made it into quarterly reports. The night shift revealed a different world, one his executive team never mentioned in their polished presentations. Tonight, he was checking the upper floors, areas that rarely saw management, even during daylight hours. That's when he heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound coming from behind a supply closet door marked "Maintenance Only." At first, he thought it might be a ventilation issue, but as he moved closer, Daniel recognized it for what it was: breathing. Someone was in there, and they were asleep. Daniel turned the handle slowly. The door opened with barely a whisper, and what he saw made him freeze. There, curled on her side atop a makeshift bed of folded cleaning rags, was a young woman in a janitor's uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her face carried the weight of exhaustion. The closet was small, barely 6 feet by 4, but she'd made it almost livable. A small alarm clock sat on an upturned bucket. Her uniform, though worn, was spotlessly clean. But it was the photograph clutched in her hand that made Daniel's chest tighten. Even in the dim light, he could make out a child's face, a little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile. This wasn't just someone sleeping on the job. This was someone who had nowhere else to go. Her eyes opened. For a moment, they stared at each other in mutual shock. Then recognition flooded her face, and she sat up fast, the photograph falling to the floor. "Please don't report me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, I'll lose everything." Rachel Morgan couldn't breathe. She pushed herself to her feet, legs unsteady. "I can explain," she started. "I work here. I'm the night janitor, Rachel Morgan. I've been here for 8 months, and my reviews are good. I never miss a shift." "How long have you been sleeping here?" The man's voice was quiet, careful. 3 weeks, she admitted. "But I'm still doing my job. I'm not stealing time from the company. I just didn't have anywhere else." Her voice broke and she hated herself for it. She bent to pick up the photograph. "My daughter, Emma. She's 4. She's staying with my neighbor because I can't." The man stepped into the closet, looking around at her meager setup. "Why here? Why not a shelter?" "They're full. Waiting list 6 weeks long. My landlord evicted me when Emma had to go to the emergency room, and I couldn't pay rent that month." "The company has assistance programs," he said. "That takes 6 to 8 weeks to process. I can't wait 2 months while my daughter lives with an 80-year-old woman who's too kind to say no." She met his eyes. "I just need time to get back on my feet. In another month, maybe 2, I'll have enough for a deposit." Then, from down the hallway came footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Rachel's eyes went wide. Barry Hodges, the night supervisor. Please, Rachel whispered. I'm begging you. Don't tell. Before Daniel could respond, Barry's voice carried through. What's going on here? Daniel moved fast, stepping out and pulling the door mostly shut behind him. Barry Hodges was in his 50s, with a face set in a permanent scowl, carrying a clipboard like a weapon. I'm just checking on a plumbing issue, Daniel said. Someone reported a leak up here. Barry's eyes narrowed. I wasn't informed of any leak. Just got the call 20 minutes ago. Night dispatcher sent me up. Barry wasn't buying it. His eyes kept drifting toward the closet door. This is a supply closet. Not exactly where you'd find plumbing issues. Was checking if any water damage extended to the storage areas. Protocol for leaks near electrical panels. Barry's radio crackled with someone calling about a spill on the first floor. Fine, but I want a full report of any issues. Daniel waited until the footsteps faded before turning back. Rachel stood just inside the doorway, her face white. He's going to come back, she whispered. Barry always comes back. Then we need to be smarter. Tomorrow evening after your shift, there's a diner on Main Street, Morton's. Rachel nodded. I know it. 7 o'clock. Your secret's safe with me. But we need to figure out a better solution than this. I don't have a choice, Rachel said. Maybe you do. But we need to talk somewhere safer. The next evening, Rachel found a note in her locker. Meet me at Morton's Diner, 7 p.m. Dan. P.S. You're not in trouble. Morton's Diner sat on the corner of Main and 5th, a relic from the 1950s with chrome trim and red vinyl booths. Rachel arrived 10 minutes early, her hands shaking as she pushed through the glass door. She chose a booth near the back, facing the door, and ordered coffee she couldn't afford, but felt obligated to buy. When Dan walked in at 7 o'clock, Rachel noticed things about him she'd missed before. He moved with quiet confidence that didn't match the worn uniform. His hands were too clean for someone who fixed pipes all day. And when he slid into the booth, she caught the faint scent of expensive cologne. Thank you for coming, he said. Like I had a choice, Rachel replied, then regretted the edge in her tone. I'm sorry. I just don't know what this is. I'm not reporting you. Dan ordered coffee. I want to help, if you'll let me. I don't need charity. It's not charity. I've been working nights at Blackwood for weeks, and I've seen things that bother me. The way some supervisors treat people. You're not the only one struggling. Something in his honesty made her relax slightly. Tell me about Emma, he said. The question surprised her. She's everything. Smart, funny, way too brave. She starts kindergarten next year, and I'm terrified because I don't even know where we'll be living. What about her father? Rachel's jaw tightened. Gone. Left 2 years ago. Hasn't sent a penny since. She stirred her coffee. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, keeps Emma during my shifts. Doesn't charge me, but I see how tired she gets. Emma's a handful, and Mrs. Chen is 83. You're working 2 jobs? Night janitor at Blackwood, morning crew at the medical center. I sleep between shifts when I can. Rachel laughed bitterly. Or I did before I lost my apartment. Dan leaned forward. What if there was affordable housing available? Something faster than the assistance program? There isn't. I've called everywhere. Rachel's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. Mrs. Chen. She answered immediately. Hello, what's wrong? How high? I'm coming right now. She was already standing. Emma has a fever, I have to go. I'll drive you, Dan said. dropping cash on the table. The drive took 8 minutes. Rachel sat rigid. She gets fevers sometimes. Usually it's nothing. But the last time it was an ear infection, and we ended up in the emergency room, and that's when everything fell apart. Rachel, Dan's voice was calm. First, we make sure Emma's okay. Mrs. Chen met them at the door, worry in her eyes. She was fine at dinner, then started saying her throat hurt. Rachel moved past her to where Emma lay on the couch, face flushed. "Mommy," the little girl whimpered. "I'm here, baby." Rachel pressed her hand to Emma's forehead. The heat made her heart race. "We need the hospital." The emergency room was quiet. A nurse took vitals while Rachel answered questions. Temperature 103.2. The nurse smiled kindly. The doctor would be in soon, but Rachel was calculating. Emergency room visit, probably 500 minimum. Tests, more. Medication, another 100. Money she didn't have. 20 minutes later, the doctor emerged with Emma and a popsicle. "Strep throat, common, treatable, antibiotics, and she'll be fine in a day or two." Relief and dread hit Rachel equally. How much? "I'll check with billing about your insurance." "I don't have insurance right now," Rachel admitted quietly. The doctor's expression softened. "I'll have someone discuss payment options." After she left, Rachel put her face in her hands. Dan walked to reception, speaking quietly. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. "What did you do?" "Made a call. The hospital has a company assistance program for Blackwood employees. Your bill's covered." Rachel stared. "Those programs don't work that fast. Sometimes they expedite for emergencies." "Who are you?" Rachel asked. "You're not just a maintenance worker." Before Dan could answer, Emma appeared with a nurse. "Mommy, the nurse said I was very brave." Rachel gathered her daughter close. Over Emma's shoulder, she met Dan's eyes, and the question hung between them. The next morning, Rachel arrived at Blackwood exhausted but relieved. Emma was improving. For the first time in weeks, she felt like maybe things might work out. That feeling lasted 45 minutes. "Morgan! Rachel Morgan! Get over here now!" Barry's voice echoed down the hallway. Rachel's stomach dropped. She hurried to the break room, where Barry stood with other workers and Marcus from day shift. All eyes turned to her. "Care to explain this?" Barry held up his clipboard, face red. "Multiple reports you've been sleeping on company time. Is that true?" The workers shifted uncomfortably. Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes. I've never, don't lie." "Marcus says he saw you in a supply closet, middle of your shift, sleeping. Said it looked like you'd set up camp." Rachel's face went hot. "I was resting for a minute. I wasn't feeling well." "For a minute? Or 3 weeks?" Barry's voice rose, drawing more workers. "Security logs show you going into that third-floor closet every shift for a month. Sometimes for hours. Want to explain?" Rachel felt blood drain from her face. Everyone was watching. A dozen coworkers forming a circle. Some looked sympathetic. Others embarrassed to witness her humiliation. "I thought so," Barry said. He wrote something on his clipboard. "Official warning, Morgan. You're docked 2 days' pay for theft of company time. One more incident, and you're terminated. Clear?" "Yes," Rachel whispered. "I couldn't hear you. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Get back to work. And stay out of closets unless you're getting supplies." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Rachel stood frozen, face burning, as Barry strode away satisfied. The crowd dispersed with whispers following. Marcus approached, guilt on his face. I'm sorry. Barry said he'd write me up if I didn't tell him. Rachel couldn't look at him. I'd just go. She finished her shift in a fog, avoiding everyone. By the time she clocked out, the entire night shift knew Rachel Morgan had been sleeping in a closet. She made it to her car before the tears came, great sobs that shook her body. She'd tried so hard to maintain dignity, and Barry had stripped it all away. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Meet me in the parking lot. Dan. Rachel looked up to see the maintenance truck. Dan stood beside it, expression grim. She got out. I'm quitting, Rachel said flatly. I can't stay here. She pulled out her resignation letter, written during break in shaky handwriting. I'll find something else. Dan took the letter but didn't look at it. Don't quit. Not yet. Give me 1 week. Things will change. How can you promise that? Because some people in this company care, and when they find out, things will change. His voice carried intensity. 1 week. Rachel wanted to believe him. Why do you even care? Because you don't deserve what Barry did. Nobody does. Dan held out the letter. 1 week. If nothing changes, I'll hand-deliver this to HR myself. Against every instinct, Rachel took the letter back. 1 week. That's all. She didn't see Daniel Blackwood's expression as she walked away. The mixture of determination and barely controlled rage. Because he'd just witnessed exactly the abuse he'd gone undercover to find. And Barry Hodges had no idea the maintenance worker he'd ignored was about to become his worst nightmare. The announcement came 3 days later, posted on every bulletin board. Corporate leadership visit Friday, October 18th. CEO Daniel Blackwood will conduct a facility tour. All employees must maintain professional standards. Rachel read it twice, her stomach knotting. The CEO. The man who owned everything, who made decisions from an office tower, who probably didn't even know her factory existed beyond profit margins. Around her, the factory floor erupted in nervous energy. Workers straightened stations, managers barked orders, and Barry transformed into a tyrant. This floor better shine, he shouted. The CEO doesn't tolerate sloppiness. Anyone who makes this facility look bad will answer to me. Rachel kept her head down. She hadn't seen Dan since their parking lot conversation 3 days ago. Part of her wondered if he'd quit, if his promise had been empty. The resignation letter sat in her locker, waiting. Thursday night, Rachel found Dan in the basement, fixing a leaking pipe. You've been avoiding me? She said. Dan looked up, something different in his expression. Not avoiding, just busy. The CEO's coming tomorrow. Barry's losing his mind. Barry won't be a problem much longer, Dan said quietly. What does that mean? It means I made some calls. Things are going to change, Rachel. You keep saying that, but you won't tell me how. Rachel's frustration bubbled over. You're a maintenance worker, Dan. What influence do you have with corporate? Dan stood. More than you'd think. Trust me, 1 more day. That's what you said 3 days ago. And I meant it. Dan stepped closer. I know you're scared. I know you don't have reason to trust me, but I'm asking you to try. Just until tomorrow. Rachel wanted to argue, but the intensity in his eyes stopped her. Fine. 1 more day. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. Rachel had worked her night shift and should have been sleeping, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, she sat in her car, watching preparations unfold. A black town car arrived at 9:30. She couldn't see who it was, just a figure in an expensive suit. The CEO had arrived. At 11, Rachel's supervisor called. "Morgan, corporate wants all department heads in conference room A. Someone needs to cover Barry's rounds. That's you. Make sure the third floor is spotless. The CEO's tour includes that area." Rachel's hands went cold. The third floor. The supply closet. When? Noon. Don't mess this up. Rachel rushed inside, grabbed her cart, and headed for the third floor. The supply closet looked exactly as she'd left it. The makeshift bed, her alarm clock, the water jug, evidence of her desperation. She had 20 minutes to erase it. She worked frantically, shoving rags into garbage bags, wiping surfaces, removing every sign someone had lived there. When she finished, the closet looked anonymous, functional, empty. Rachel stood in the doorway, breathing hard, and felt unexpected grief. This horrible space had been her shelter. She was finishing the hallway when she heard voices and footsteps. The tour. Rachel kept mopping, head down, trying to be invisible. The group rounded the corner, 5 people in suits, plus Barry trailing behind. And in front, the man from the town car. Rachel kept her eyes on the floor. "This floor houses overflow storage and mechanical systems," Barry was saying, voice oily. "We maintain strict cleanliness standards." "I'd like to see the supply closets," a voice interrupted. A familiar voice. Rachel's head snapped up, and the world tilted. Because the CEO of Blackwood Industries, the man in the expensive suit, was Dan. Daniel Blackwood, met her eyes, and something passed between them. Recognition? Apology? Determination? "This one," Daniel said, pointing at the supply closet Rachel had just cleaned. "Open it." Barry fumbled with keys, confused. He opened the door, and the group peered inside at the empty space. "How often are these spaces inspected?" Daniel asked. "Weekly, sir," Barry lied. "I personally ensure—" "Interesting, because I have security footage showing this closet being accessed multiple times per shift for a month. Yet there's no record of maintenance issues that would justify that." Daniel's voice was cold. "Care to explain, Mr. Hodges?" Barry's face went from confident to pale. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake." Daniel turned to an executive. "Pull up the footage. I want to know exactly what's been happening here." Rachel stood frozen as the scene unfolded. Barry stammered, but Daniel cut him off. "Save it. We'll discuss this in my office." Then Daniel's eyes found Rachel's. "Ms. Morgan, isn't it? I'd like to speak with you as well. Conference room A, immediately." He walked away, executives trailing after. Barry shot her a look of venom before following, and Rachel was alone in the hallway, her world upside down. Dan was the CEO. The man she'd confessed everything to wasn't some sympathetic maintenance worker. He was the person with power to fire her with a word, and she'd yelled at him, shown him every vulnerable piece of herself. Rachel's phone buzzed. Unknown number. "I know you're scared. I know you feel betrayed. But please come to the conference room. I can explain everything. You're not in trouble, I promise. Daniel." She stared at the message, hands shaking. Part of her wanted to run, but another part, the part that had survived eviction and homelessness and humiliation, was angry. Daniel Blackwood had lied to her. Rachel deleted the text, straightened her uniform, and headed for conference room A. If the CEO wanted to talk, they'd talk. But this time, she'd be the one asking questions. Conference room A was on the executive floor, a place Rachel had never been. The carpet was thick beneath her work boots, the walls lined with portraits of company founders. She felt like an intruder in her janitor's uniform, smelling of cleaning solution. A secretary directed her to wait outside, where she could hear raised voices through the door. When it opened 10 minutes later, Barry emerged, his face ashen, escorted by security. He didn't look at Rachel as he passed. Then an executive appeared. "Ms. Morgan, Mr. Blackwood will see you now?" Rachel's heart hammered as she stepped inside. The room was enormous, dominated by a mahogany table, and at the head sat Daniel, still in his suit, tie loosened. The other executives were gone. They were alone. "Please sit," Daniel said. Rachel remained standing. Was any of it real? The maintenance uniform, the conversations, was it all just a game to you? Daniel's expression tightened. "It wasn't a game. I went undercover because I needed to see what was really happening in my company. The reports didn't match the turnover rates, the complaints. So I came here as Dan to find the truth. And you found me. The perfect case study. Must have made for a great story." "That's not—" Daniel stood, then sat back down. "Rachel, I never meant to deceive you. When I found you that night, I wanted to help, but I couldn't break cover without compromising everything. If Barry had known who I was, they would have hidden what I needed to see. So you lied to me instead." "Yes," Daniel admitted. "And I'm sorry, but everything else, the hospital, the conversations, the promise, all of that was real." Rachel finally sat, exhausted. "What happens now? You fire me quietly to avoid embarrassment?" "Fire you?" Daniel looked shocked. "Rachel, I just fired Barry. He's being escorted off property, along with 2 other supervisors who knew about violations and did nothing." Rachel stared. "You fired Barry?" "For harassment, creating a hostile work environment, and falsifying reports." Daniel slid a folder across the table. "I also had HR prepare this. A job offer, human resources coordinator, focusing on worker welfare. Someone who's lived through what you have should help fix the system." Rachel opened the folder with shaking hands. The salary made her breath catch. Triple her janitor pay. Benefits, insurance. "I don't understand. I saw integrity in you, Rachel, strength. You could help make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else." Daniel's voice softened. "But if you can't trust me, I won't stop you from walking away. I'll provide severance, references, whatever you need. Why do you even care?" "Because I built this company from nothing, and somewhere I lost sight of the people who keep it running. You reminded me what matters." Daniel met her eyes. "And because when I saw you holding Emma's picture, trying to maintain your dignity, I saw someone who deserved better." Rachel sat in silence. Part of her wanted to throw it back, to walk out with pride intact. But the practical part knew this was a lifeline she couldn't refuse. "I need time," she said, "to think." "Of course." Daniel pulled an envelope from his pocket. "This isn't conditional on the job. It's something you need." Rachel opened it. Lease documents for an apartment on Maple Street. First and last month paid. Move in. Immediately. "I can't accept this. It's not charity or a bribe. It's the company making right what it should have prevented. We have an assistance fund for these situations. I'm cutting through bureaucracy." Daniel's voice was gentle. "Emma needs a home, Rachel. You both do." Rachel felt tears burning. "I don't know if I can trust you." "Then don't. Not yet." Daniel stepped back. "Take the apartment. Think about the job. And if you decide you can't work for me, I'll understand. But please, let me do this one thing right." Rachel stood, clutching the envelope. 1 week. I'll give you an answer in 1 week. That's all I'm asking." As Rachel walked to the door, Daniel called after her. For what it's worth, meeting you, seeing what real courage looks like, it changed something in me too. Rachel paused but didn't turn. Courage is just fear that's run out of other options. Then she left. 1 week later, Rachel sat across from Daniel at Morton's Diner, the same booth where this began. But everything was different. She'd moved into the apartment. Emma had her own bedroom. Mrs. Chen had cried happy tears. "I'll take the job," Rachel said, "but I have conditions." Daniel set down his coffee. "I'm listening. No special treatment. I earn my place like everyone else. And if I see something wrong, I speak up, even if it makes you uncomfortable." "Agreed. And you stop hiding. No more undercover operations. If you want to know what's happening, ask. Be present. Talk to people." Daniel smiled slightly. "Harder than undercover work, but agreed." Rachel pulled out a folded paper, Emma's latest drawing. 3 stick figures. Mommy, Emma, and the nice man who helped. She slid it across. "She wanted you to have this. She doesn't understand what you did, but she knows you helped us." Rachel's voice softened. "I'm still angry you lied, and scared to trust you, but I'm also grateful. And I think maybe we can build something good from this." Daniel picked up the drawing, eyes shining. "I'd like that." They talked for hours about changes Daniel was implementing, about Rachel's ideas for worker support, about rebuilding broken trust. When the sun set through the diner windows, Rachel realized she felt something she hadn't in months. Hope. 3 months later, Rachel stood at the front of the conference room, facing 200 Blackwood employees. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "My name is Rachel Morgan, and 3 months ago, I was sleeping in a supply closet on the 3rd floor." The room went silent. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because every person here deserves to know that if you're struggling, you're not alone, and you're not invisible." She outlined new programs. Emergency assistance that worked quickly, anonymous reporting, monthly town halls where any employee could speak to management. She talked about dignity, respect, the kind of company Blackwood could become. In the back row, Daniel watched with quiet pride as Rachel, who'd been humiliated, who'd lost everything and rebuilt through determination, stood tall before the same people who'd witnessed her lowest moment. Now she taught them about courage, second chances, seeing people truly. After the presentation, Daniel approached her. "You were amazing." Rachel smiled, genuine warmth now in her expression. "I had a good teacher. Someone once told me that when people in power see what's happening on the ground, things change." She met his eyes. "You saw me, Daniel. Even when I felt invisible, you saw me. That made all the difference." "You were never invisible, Rachel. You were just waiting for the right moment to shine." As they walked out together, Rachel glanced back at the conference room. 6 months ago, she'd been desperate and homeless. Now she was building something that mattered, creating change to help people like her. The journey had been hard, painful, humiliating, but also transformative. Sometimes the hardest moments weren't endings, Rachel thought. They were beginnings in disguise. And sometimes the people who saw you at your lowest helped you reach heights you'd never imagined. Emma's drawing hung framed in Rachel's office now, a reminder that kindness, given freely and received with courage, could change everything.